Hi, boys and girls, it's Mr. Morris, and I want to give you guys a chance to take a look at this PowerPoint I'm going to walk you through so that you'll be able to understand what it is you're exactly looking for when you're taking notes. Okay, the first part of this is the geography and trade of Egypt. Geography, the study of features and systems of the Earth's surface, including continents, mountains, seas, weather, and plant life, and of the ways in which countries and people organize life within an area. See, people started settling here about 5500 BC, about 7,500 years ago. The Nile provided great fishing, planting, and a safe place for invading tribes. Now, in your notes, what is the main idea here about the Nile River? The question I want you guys to be thinking about is, how did the Nile River shape the way the ancient Egyptians interacted with their environment and everything around them? Here are some basic facts that you should know about the Nile River. It's the longest river in the world. The Nile is 4,135 miles long, going all the way down here through Africa. It flows south to north. That's weird. And it is also known as the lotus flower because it looks like a flower up here and a long stem. That's its nickname. The Nile River. The mountains of the south of Africa down here melt, and the water floods this way because the mountains in the south. That's why it flows south to north. The fertile soil is known as the black land, and the dry land is known as the red land because of how red it is, like the desert. The black land is here where all the soil is. Now, again, in your notes, I would put down these basic facts so you could hold on to it and go back to it later. The Mediterranean Sea is in the north, and this up here is where the Nile empties into. This is that delta area where it has all that soil where everybody farms all the time for the last several thousand years. Desert on each side, natural defense, and this is the reason why nobody ever attacked them in early Egypt so they could build all those pyramids. Take a look at this map. This map shows the Nile going very long all the way down through about 600 miles into what we now call ancient Egypt. There was flooding, and there was recession of the water, and there were several different seasons that happened throughout the Nile. When the Nile would flood, the farmers would plant upon the water soaking into the soil. When the Nile was low or dry, they couldn't plant their crops, so many would starve. The Pharaoh would be blamed for this, and the Pharaoh would blame the god, and the god would blame the people's bad behavior. Here are these 4 seasons of the Nile. The flooding of the river was automatic with the southern snowmelt and all the water coming down. This is why they didn't need the rain, because of all of the summer snowmelt in the south. There's the flooding, then the planting, the harvesting, and the watering. During the flooding season, it was also known as the rainy season. Didn't rain a lot, but when the water would come down from the ice melt, the irrigation area, and it really affects the irrigation. If the flood surrounds the irrigation land, then the crops would be damaged in these circumstances. They had to build dams to store the water so that the water wouldn't damage the crop area. Each farmer had separate land so they could set up their own boundary. They used very big stones for the boundary of separation in this activity, and they can change the boundary lines if they had any problem in separating the boundary or marking the boundary. So they used those rocks to kind of separate whose land was whose land, and they were in charge of the upkeep of those boundary stones. Take a moment and watch this film on your own time. Agriculture. In ancient Egypt, it was very good to be compared to the recent agricultural technology for all the work that they did to ease the human work. In ancient Egypt, all the farmers should have some land about 30 to 40 cubic meters. Again, those boundary lines gave them that land to do that in. Farmers are investing small amount to get large profit. The work they put in would be rewarded several times over with all of that food that they would get back from the growing season. Water was very essential criteria. They needed the water to grow their crops. They needed this continuously for the farmer without any interruption. That's why it was so important for those 4 seasons. The rivers were the big part. The Nile River was the major reason for development in ancient Egypt. This is a primary source. This is something or a picture of something that was made thousands of years ago. Take a look at this primary source and see what it tells you. What does it show these people doing, and how did the Nile help these people do this? Take a couple moments and look at it, and then tell me if you know what this is showing the people doing and how the Nile helped them do this. Trade. The ancient Egyptians were wonderful at trading things. They traded gold, papyrus, linen, and grain for cedarwood, ebony, copper, ivory, lapis lazuli, which is a lovely blue gemstone. Ships would sail up and down the Nile River, bringing goods to various ports. Once goods were unloaded, goods were hauled on various merchants by camel, cart, and on foot. Donkeys were used by farmers, not traders usually. Egyptians and traders from their other civilizations just beyond the mouth of the Nile. They would meet to trade goods that were brought to them, but they did not often travel themselves much further beyond the Nile River. So all the trade pretty much took place in and around the Nile River, not beyond it. Take a look at this picture. Who's getting the better deal? The guy getting the fish or the guy getting the grain? Why do you think one is getting a better deal than the other? And this is a secondary source because this is a picture that somebody painted recently, not an actual artifact from the time period being studied. Here's the final part. As you know, the world has changed in a way of trading. The ancient Egyptians depended on this way of trading as their money. They had many farms and growing livestock to trade their tools and to make their food. This is also the means, the other things they needed to live. They couldn't just live by food alone. They needed other things, and trade is how they got that. People also collected many different minerals that can be traded for foods, metals and minerals that they could trade or be traded around the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea. The Egyptians had many things to trade and to make their lives a lot better. The main economy was made up of trade and farming. What you've read in these documents can provide a glimpse of the Egyptian life thousands of years ago. How do you think the Nile River shaped the way the ancient Egyptians interact with their environment?